Hello fellow rail fans, welcome to another train guide video. Train Guides is a series where I provide useful operating techniques and information on certain trains in Train Sim World and Train Sim World 2. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the 1972 stock on the Bakerloo Line. Some of you may know that I've already released a train guide video on the specific rolling stock, but I didn't really like how that video turned out when I looked back on it. This new version will be more in-depth and informative. I usually have two categories in these videos. The first one is some information and history of the rail car, while the second one is when we jump in the cab. I will leave a timestamp in the description of the video for when we get into the cab of the train. The London Underground 1972 stock was constructed between 1972 and 1974 by Metro-Cammell in Washwood Heath in England. The general design of this train is based heavily off of the 1967 stock trains, formerly used on the Victoria Line. After the first 1972 stock units arrived, London Transport ordered a further 33 trains to provide service on the Northern Line. The second batch of trains was called the 1972 Mark II stock. When the Mark II stock first arrived, they ran alongside the existing Mark I units on the Northern Line. In 1977, they were transferred to the Bakerloo. In 1987, all Mark II units were transferred from the Jubilee and Northern lines to the Bakerloo, where they remain in service to this day. The Mark I units were replaced by the 1995 stock in 1999, and a few of them were converted to run with 1967 stock on the Victoria Line. The entire fleet was refurbished between 1991 and 1995 by Tickford at Rosyth Dockyard. These units were refurbished once again in 2016 and 2018 in order for these trains to remain in revenue service until the replacement date of 2035. Transport for London's new Tube for London plan aims to replace both the rolling stock and signaling on the whole of the Bakerloo line and other lines like the Piccadilly, Central, and Waterloo and City lines. The proposal aims to introduce automated trains and signaling on the Piccadilly first by 2025, followed by the rest of the formerly mentioned lines by 2033. All trains are made up of 7 car sets. Each car is 8.5 feet in width, 9.5 feet in height, and 52 feet in length, making a whole train about 372 feet long. The maximum allowed speed of these units while running on the Bakerloo is 45 miles an hour. Now that we're done with the information, let's hop into the cab. We are now in the cab of the 72 stock. I've created this scenario in the scenario planner. We're running from Queen's Park to Heron-Wellstone. Let's get the train set up. We're going to look down here. We have the control key. We're going to put that in. We're going to turn that to the on position. Let's open the windows. In order to apply power while the windows are open, you're going to want to turn the drop light interlock into the cut out position. Then open the windows. We're going to do the same on the other side. Now while we're over here, let's turn the tail lights off, the gauge lights on, and the passenger lights on. We're then going to put our direction selector key in, which is the reverser key. We're going to move that to the forward position. This is your cab light and your fan speed. It makes no sense to turn on the fan since we have the windows open, so let's turn on the cab light. I'm going to turn it to the right, since if you have both or only the left one on, you get glare on the windshield. We're then going to move the master controller into the 0 position. Going to move it to off and release, and then press this button right here to get rid of that noise. Then we're going to put it back in notch 1. These is your door buttons. You got doors open left, doors closed left, doors open right, doors closed right. We're going to open the left doors. This is your destination blind. Our terminal station is here on Wellstone, so we're going to find down the destination blind. We're then going to leave it there, and it should be set up in the front of the train. This is your brake test. In order to use it, turn it to the on position. You have a yellow light on now. You're going to sit down in the driver's seat, move the master controller back to the emergency position, and the light should turn red. Move it back to notch 1. It turns green. Your brakes are good. Going to turn that off. Now, over here is your reverse lockout. This is how you reverse the train. London Underground trains are not meant to be reversed while in revenue service. However, this is how you do it. Put it to the cut out position. Then you take your direction selector key and you put it in the reverse position. And then you can drive the train in reverse. We're not going to be using that today since they don't normally use it in revenue service. You cannot exit through this door at all in the game. Dovetail has locked it. There are mods on PC to allow you to go through the door. However, we are on console right now, so we cannot open this door. We're now going to lock the train doors. So we're going to press the door close button. And we're now going to get moving. We're going to put the master controller into shunt. As you can see, we have a green signal, so we're able to go. And that is a 10-mile-an-hour speed limit. So I'm just going to leave it in shunt for now. Now, over here, we have our windshield wipers. Use those when it's raining. And over here, we have our rate switch. Now, it will usually be in rate 2 when you start up a regular service. However, if it is raining or snowing or the tracks are wet, you're going to want to put that in rate 1. It lowers the power the train puts into its acceleration and lessens the wheel slip you get on the train. Now, you will still get wheel slip if you throw it straight into full parallel. However, you shouldn't be doing that in the rain anyway. Over here, this is your announcement display. It does not work in the game. However, in real life, an operator will set up the automated announcements through this screen right here. If you guys played the World of Subways 3 on the Circle Line, you should know how this works. You press, let's say, 1 to put on the doors closing announcement, and the regular announcement for each station will play when approaching each station. Now, I have a video on my channel of me going through the whole of the Bakerloo Line with the announcements on. However, I had to put the announcements in while editing. They were not actually in the game. We're now going to turn our HUD off since we've driven with it for a little bit. We're about to get a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. We passed it just as we came out of Queens Park. We now have that 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. The back of your train passes it as soon as you come around that curve. Now, we are now connected with the London Overground. The London Overground joint from the left and from the right at Queens Park. And we are running along the Watford branch tracks. The Watford branch uses class 378s and class 710s. And it runs all the way up to Watford Junction from London Euston. Now, since we are on the overground section, we have to follow National Rail speed limit protocols, which means that you cannot accelerate up to the next speed limit unless the back of your train has passed the speed limit sign. While in the tunnels, you are under London Underground speed restrictions, which means you can accelerate as soon as you pass the sign. However, Train Sim World does not take that into effect. You will have to do that on your own. The speed limits will change in the game when the back of the train passes it. I'm pretty sure that is a technical restraint though. We're now entering Kensal Green. We're going to want to stop just after the screen here. We're going to unlock the left doors. And we are now at Kensal Green. Now, one thing I should explain, while stopping the train, it's best not to not to feather the brakes. And by feathering, I mean putting it into off and release and then back into notch 1 braking, and keep doing that over and over again. It jolts the passengers around and it does not leave for a comfortable ride for them. Most experienced operators usually come into the station at a pretty fast speed. They will put it straight into notch 3 braking, and if they need to adjust somewhere along the platform, they'll go back into notch 1. The only time where you should go back into notch 0 is if you are under 15 miles an hour and you think you are going to undershoot the platform. We've now let the passengers board, so we're going to lock the left doors. And move on to the next station, which should be Wilson Junction. Now, for the most part, this route is authentically replicated for the most part, and let me explain. Going through this tunnel, I've seen many cab ride videos, and there is actually supposed to be lights lining this tunnel. Not too big of a deal, but that's one thing that Dovetail did not include. Another thing is track noise. London Underground is pretty loud, especially with these older units, and subways in general are pretty loud, but you barely hear any track noise. You only hear track noise when you're going over junctions and crossings. We're coming up to a 30-mile-an-hour speed limit, so we're going to put it into notch 1 braking to make sure we are not over speeding as we pass it, as we are about to go around a sharp curve. Anyways though, the London Underground is pretty loud, and the sound design on this route is a little off, especially when you are in the tunnels. The traction motors on this train sound a little too loud, and the flange sound, the sound the train makes when going around curves, like now, right now, that is a good value for the sound. However, when you're in the tunnels coming into Piccadilly Circus, they overdo it with the sound a bit much. We're now approaching Wilson Junction. We're going to be entering the station on the far left track. I'm pretty sure the middle track is used for trains that are terminating at the station, as there is a bumper block at the end of the platform. I'm not sure if it's used for London Underground or Overground trains that terminate there. Anyways though, we are going to start decelerating as we want to stop where the camera display is in the middle window. It's good enough. Gonna unlock the right doors. We're now at Wilson Junction. As you can see, we have another train on the right track. That train is going towards possibly Elephant and Castle. Now, since this is a scenario planner made route, I have put in a fair amount of services going back the other direction. Let's lock the doors. In the actual timetable mode in this game, you will not see many trains passing by, as the timetable is shortened from real life. However, there's an update coming soon to add more services into this route in the game. We're coming up on a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit. We're just going to keep accelerating as the back of the train will have passed the 45 board, as we are passing our 30-mile-per-hour threshold. We're now going through the underpass. You will see another 72 stop coming in the opposite direction. I believe we are going under the East Coast Main Line, which runs Pendolinos and I believe some Class 377s, although you can correct me on that down in the comment section if I am incorrect. We are now approaching the next station. We don't want to enter this station too quickly, as I found myself and many other operators, it's very easy to accidentally overrun this station right here. I'm going to put it into notch 1. We want to end up with the camera display in the left window. Gonna unlock the doors. Now, what I like to do is I like to leave the train in notch 1 braking when I stop at the station, because it makes the dead man's handle come up, and it's basically like in real life. You wouldn't want to hold the handle the whole time you're in the station, as well as when you are driving. You're going to want to put the handle up while you're in the station, like operators do here in New York City. I'm going to lock the doors and move on to the next station, which I believe is Stonebridge Park. Now, since this is a subway train after all, even if Londoners call it the Tube, the Underground, it is still a subway system. Trains do not stay at the station for pretty long, unlike national rail trains and regular commuter trains. They usually stay at the station for a good minute or so. However, Underground trains usually stay at the station for 20-25 seconds. I like to make it 10 to 15 seconds, as we are not running with announcements on. As you can see on the left there, we have the East Coast Main Line with the pantograph cables. We have another 72 stock going the opposite direction. Now we have a sign coming up here. I believe that sign says break in the third rail, or third rail gap, something like that. Section gap. I believe that section gap is telling operators that there is a third rail break, which means that power cannot be applied to the train. Not exactly sure where that section gap is. However, that's my best thoughts on it. It might actually be right here, coming into Stonebridge Park. Now we're coming into the station kind of quickly, so I'll put the train into notch 3 to make sure we did not overrun the station. We want to end up in the same place. Unlock the doors. Now we're at Stonebridge Park. You have the Stonebridge Park depot and sidings over there. Now if your service was terminating at Stonebridge Park and you were going into the sidings, this light would be red for you, and you will see 2 white lights under it right there. That will indicate that you are clear to heading to the yard. Since we are heading up to Harrow and Wealdstone, we do not get those 2 white lights, and we are only getting a green signal, which means we can progress forward. We're going to lock the doors now and move on to the next station, which I believe is Wembley Central. Now, the Bakerloo Line is the first subway route in Train Sim World, and it is not a bad route by any means. However, Dovetail definitely could have done a better job with it. Now, they did exclude some things, and those things may be minor to some. However, for certain rail fans out there, you may notice them immediately, just how I noticed that there was no track noise immediately. Just some things to look out for on the route, so you won't be surprised if you do try and play this route. Coming up on a 40-mile-an-hour speed restriction, but we are about to come to a incline, so as we're going through this tunnel, we are going to put the train into notch 3 acceleration to make sure we don't lose speed on this incline. As you can see, we have another 72 stock train going the opposite direction. That is what I mean by I put more services than usual on this route. We're now coming up to Wembley Central. Now, it would be nice to see more subway lines in the game. Maybe have older developers come into TSW and recreate their routes in the new engine, so console players can play it, such as Just Trains with their Metropolitan Line DLC. Now we want to stop the train at the end of the platform. this is Wembley Central. You can connect here to National Rail Services and London Overground, and that is the East Coast Main Line. The little flyover we went under was where the East Coast Main Line switched over to the right side, and it stops here at Wembley Central along with London Overground and Underground trains. We're going to lock the doors and move on to our next station, which is North Wembley. However, continuing what I was saying, it would be nice to see more either underground routes or subway routes in the game. For underground routes, they could do some of the subsurface lines when they were in the transitional period between the C, A, and D stock and the S stock, to where they do not have to implement automatic train operation, which is classified as ATO by operators. Some people may not like the sound of ATO being on a route, since it will not leave the player with a lot of driving to do, since the system is doing most of it. The only thing the driver would do is operate the doors. Personally, I would be fine with an ATO route in the game. However, I understand some of the criticism people have for Dovetail wanting to include one. Now coming up to the next station, which is North Wembley. I've cut the power just before we enter the station, since this station has a shorter platform than most, and I find myself overrunning the station a fair bit. We're also going to start decelerating before we enter the station. Make sure we are at 30 miles an hour or below. We want to end up with the camera display in the left window of the train. This is North Wembley. That's another 72 stock coming down. Now we're actually kind of early, because I've noticed the other times that I've ran this route, this train would already be in the station. So we're just going to wait here for another 15 or so seconds to get back on the regular timetable. We are now going to lock the doors. The next station is South Kenton. One thing it would have been nice to see Dovetail include in this route is some class 378s or 710s used by the London Overground on this route to give it a little more life, or have some of the trains we currently have, maybe the 377s. Not sure if they actually run on the ECML. However, I have seen some videos of one running down this bit of track. But they could have included those to give this piece of track, the overground section, a little more life and make it feel less deserted. Now they did make it feel a little less deserted by having some of the signals on the East Coast Main Line work, as in they show red, yellow, and green aspects. However, you do not see any trains passing by, so it's kind of useless or irrelevant. We're now approaching South Kenton. We're going to start braking just before we enter the station. Now, as you can see, as we get further along the line, I'm starting to brake as soon as we enter the station instead of halfway down the station, as I've noticed that more of these stations towards the northern end of the line have shorter platforms. We're just going to coast here to make sure the mirror or display, I'm not really sure which one it is, but we want to make sure that's in the center window so we can see, we would be able to see the back of the train. Now unfortunately, Dovetail doesn't have any reflections on this route or speed limit cameras. I accidentally clicked the map. I'm gonna lock the doors. Next station is Kenton, and I believe between South Kenton and Kenton you get to see the Metropolitan Line cross over the Bakerloo Line. I believe you can see it right up there. Now, no Metropolitan Line trains have been included, and I'm not sure if they removed this piece of track, but we're going to check as we are going under the overpass to see if they've laid any tracks for the Metropolitan Line. I'm not sure if it's only the Metropolitan Line or if it's also the Jubilee Line, since the Jubilee runs along the Metropolitan for some of the routes. As you can see here, the tracks are laid. I believe that's the Metropolitan Line, Jubilee Line, and some national rail trains. Now we are approaching Kenton. We're going to enter the station at around 38 miles an hour. We're going to start braking right now. I'm going to put it into notch 2, notch 3 braking. Brakes in this train are very good, however, don't overestimate the brakes. Sometimes you can overestimate the brakes and brake a little too softly and overrun the station. As you can see here on contours, some of the textures are at a lower resolution. Hopefully they can get that fixed on the next gen contours. Hopefully they can get a lot of stuff fixed on the next gen contours, such as texture popping. Some of the graphics do look a little off in the game. Some of the models need to look a little better, and maybe they can include more passengers or more trains, since the consoles won't be bottlenecked, as they are. The new consoles are the equivalent of, I believe, the 2080 series of cards. Let's lock the doors. Our next and last station is here on Wealdstone. Now, as some of you may know, I have already done a train guide on this route before, and you can find that on my channel if I haven't already privated the video. However, I went back to that video and I did not really like how it turned out, as I felt like I did not include a lot of information on the trains. So I wanted to come back to remake that video and provide a little more information than I did before. Now, this includes me driving the route for a little longer. I'm probably going to do this for some of the other train guide videos I've done. However, I might not do it for the M3 and M7, as that will require a lot of pre-training, as I would need to learn how the signals, not the signals, the speed limits, learn where the speed limits are without using the HUD, as the trackside boards are not there. We're now approaching here on Wealdstone. I really hope they can figure out a solution for the East Coast Main Line. It would be nice to see some of those trains passing by. I do think TSW needs more modern British routes in the game, and we are getting that with Southeastern High Speed. However, we definitely need more, maybe the London Overground, or who knows, we might be able to get some expansions for existing routes, like GWR electrification, maybe include the Elizabeth Line, Gatwick Express, or expand East Coastway. This is here on Wealdstone. Now, as you can see here, I was talking about before, when you're going into sidings, you're going to have a red signal. The red signal is for trains that want to go past the sidings. The white signal means the next train can go into the sidings. As you can see, the tracks are set for us to go into the sidings. Now, if we were a London Overground train, that signal will be green and we'll be continuing on past that 30-mile-an-hour speed board up to Watford Junction. We're going to lock our doors and we're going to move into the sidings. Now, I'm not going to be able to show you guys the shutdown procedure. However, it will basically just be the doing what you did to set up the train, just do it backwards, basically. It's really all it is just do it backwards. I'm not going to be able to show you guys because once we end up at the sidings, the scenario will be done. I'm not really sure if that's an AWS magnet or if that was a trip stopper right there. They both look the same to me. Now we have reached the end of the video. I would like to tell you guys, if you want to see another London Underground route in the game, hit the like button. I will catch you guys in the next video. Subscribe if you're new. Check out the rest of the train guide playlist. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.